My name is JC Eklund. This is an illustrated audio book review. The book I read was called Elon Musk, Tesla, SpaceX, and the Quest for a Fantastic Future. It is written by author Ashley Vance. The main theme of the book is about Elon Musk and his adventures as an engineer, a physicist, a rocket scientist, and a business tycoon. His goals are to get to space, save the world, and better mankind. So, what are some of the characters of the book? The main character, like I said, is Elon Musk himself. Elon Musk's brother, Kimball Musk, he helped co found a company called Zip2. This is Elon's main business partner throughout the book and his life. A woman named Justine Musk. This is Elon Musk's first wife, whom he has twins and triplets with. Tallulah Riley, this is Elon's second and his third wife. They got divorced and they are currently divorced again. Greg, he co founded a company startup called X.com in the college dorm with Elon Musk. There's also many sub characters of investors and many workers and physicists and engineers and other scientists that help with the SpaceX program and the Tesla program. And then the other two main characters are Eberhard and Tappening. These are the people that came up with Tesla and got the name from Nikola Tesla, who eventually leave Tesla and Elon takes over. So event summary. The book did a great job of summarizing per chapter. So the first two chapters is just kind of Elon as a kid, such as why it's called Elon's World in Africa. It's called Africa because Elon grew up in South Africa, where there was lots of, as he describes, a tough childhood with a not very supportive father. The good part that comes out of that, though, is his brother Kimball. In the in the third chapter, Elon has grown up and gotten older, and he decides to move out of his hometown and move to Canada to pursue college and a better life, where he kind of jumps around from place to place, finding family members that his mother has told him live near there. And so he attends college in Canada, and then eventually he leaves on a scholarship to attend a college in the United States. This kind of leads us to chapter 4, which is Elon's first startup. Elon's first startup was Zip2. They thought that while they were in college, they could make some money by creating a website that was kind of like a Google Maps type thing. It kind of helped businesses and put businesses on the map, and it was kind of before people really thought that the internet was going to do much, and before a lot of people used the internet and stuff like that. But Elon was very successful in his startup, and they ended up selling Zip2 for over $300 million. And this was Elon's kind of first big business that really got him set up in a world where he can be more creative. And instead of living off of that money, Elon instantly took that money and reinvested it, and he created another startup, and that startup was during what was called the dot-com era. And this was when people are really starting to get into using the internet and creating .coms or websites to better their businesses, and they created something called X.com. X.com was similar. It's an online banking, and it's just a way that they could quickly transfer money between people's accounts. You've probably heard of PayPal, and that is because Elon Musk company X.com merged with another company called PayPal. Elon had the financial side and the business savvy side, so they merged together and eventually sold to eBay for $1.5 billion. So those were Elon's first two major startups and events that kind of let him then get back to his roots of what he wanted to do as a child. And so after he sold PayPal, he was still interested in not just calling it quits, but instead wanted to do what he had always hoped to do and dreamed to do. So while he was a little kid in Elon's World, Chapter 1, and Africa, Chapter 2, he had actually won many science fairs for his intelligence, such as coding his own video game and dreaming of going to space and to science, and using science to go to space. And so he wanted to get back into that. Well, now that he had become somewhat of a celebrity personnel by selling X.com and Zip2, he used his resources to meet with some big people in the aerospace industry, such as Boeing and NASA and stuff like that. And so when he had their meetings, they weren't necessarily going to take Elon Musk serious for the first time because he didn't really have any experience in that sort of field. But Elon does have a degree in physics from when he went to college in Canada and the United States, and he used this incredible intelligence and physics degree to study up on aerospace engineering and rocket science, and very much so impressed these big investors and people that are already in the rocket scene, and was able to convince them to go in and start a new company, which he named SpaceX. Here he dreams for a mission to Mars and sending mice into space. And that is kind of what Chapter 6 is, the struggles they go through. They end up creating a rocket called the Falcon 1, and this was their first rocket to attempt going to space. Their goal is to try to undercut like the United States military and the Russians, where it was costing them billions of dollars to send people to space. And his hopes was to cut that into a fraction of the cost and only spend millions. His initial goal was somewhere around like $2 million versus the billions that other people were spending to send people to space. Well, he had started out with just a few people and coding and creating and inventing their own, well, not necessarily inventing, but fabricating their own materials to accomplish this feat. And it started with just a few people, and in the end, they end up having hundreds of people. And they fail 4 times, almost bankrupting Elon Musk's and his entire income he had gotten from PayPal. The only thing that saved him was on their, I believe it was their 4th or 5th trial, and using something called the Falcon 9. So this is their 9th, or their Falcon 9 was similar to the Falcon 1. The Falcon 1 he also named after, if you've heard of it, Star Wars, the Millennium Falcon. The Millennium Falcon is a spaceship in the movie. The Falcon 9, if successful, was going to get a grant from the government for $1.6 billion. And so there was a lot of pressure on Elon and their Musk after many failed attempts and being bankrupt and having to recall investors and stuff like that. They were successful, and a lot of people put their time and money and their science and scientific minds of many people into building these rockets. And everyone that's interviewed in the book talks about how hands-on of a boss Elon is. He isn't just a man that sits in his office, but he uses that physics and that scientific mind of his to help create these rockets. And in fact, when the engineers and coders and programmers and physicists and all these other people can't figure out problems, normally Elon was the one to come up with a solution. In Chapter 7, it talks about all electric. So during the SpaceX program, Elon decided to take on another project from the 2 people that I mentioned at the beginning who had come up with something called Tesla. Tesla is a company before electric cars became super popular. It was a company named after Nikola Tesla and was aimed towards creating a cleaner, better way to travel, and that was going to be achieved by electric cars. Well, these 2 people had figured out that certain batteries had come a long ways in advancement, and people weren't taking advantage of that. So they asked Elon to help them create this company of electric cars, and you can see pictures actually in the book of them showing them gluing hundreds of little battery packs together in a configuration to try to attempt and figure out how can they make an electric car work without only being able to go a few feet and actually go long distances at a time. And they're also very quick cars as well. And so they were using that thought of having a fast car to interest investors to help them take off the company of Tesla. It does help that Elon had lots of people to recognize his name to get investors and celebrities that would be interested in the Tesla name. Elon and them, when they released the first car, it was called the Tesla Roadster. The Tesla Roadster was already released and was supposed to be in the budget of $100,000 for people that had upfronted the money so that they could create the business. Ended up being that they thought the car itself was going to cost over $200,000 to make, so they had to use their scientific minds and figure out a way to lessen the price, as well as a pretty significant problem of worried what would happen if one of the batteries were to catch on fire. Well, they tested just one single battery. They put it on fire and it blew up like a firecracker. So they thought, well, what are we going to do when hundreds of them blow up? So they had to re-engineer and use their scientific minds again to create a battery pack that was safe for the daily driver. And one thing I want to mention about all these engineers that have been helping Elon Musk the whole time, I just want to show students that anyone can do it. Elon comes from a place, in South Africa where he had a rough childhood, but also to hit a little bit closer to home here in Iowa. It mentions I believe on page 122 of the book, that one of Elon's first major engineers and scientists that helped him work in the SpaceX program was actually a student from Iowa State. Elon is known to take headhunting towards colleges and top scientists and engineers from colleges, and so he grabbed one from Iowa State and has made a major impact in the SpaceX program. So that should encourage people, especially in little Iowa, where you wouldn't normally think that you can be successful. You really, truly can. So in chapter 8, pain, suffering, and survival, this was a little bit of a sadder chapter. This is, again, talking about how he almost went broke, but at the same time, him and his, at the time, wife Justine, whom he met in college, suffered the loss of their 10-week-old son from SIDS, but then used IVF to have twins and then triplets. And then at the same time, Elon, where his rocket was being built on one of the islands, caught malaria and was put in the hospital for several weeks and almost died. So that chapter was a little bit sadder. But in chapter 9 was the lift back up. Even though they were almost broke, that is when they received the grant and of the $1.6 billion, and they finally had a successful rocket fly off with 4 failed attempts previously. Chapter 10, Revenge of the Electric Car. This is just where Elon wasn't very successful initially. He was overpriced at $200,000 to build the car when he was promising to sell them for $100,000. Here he had a more successful car. And then here later on, I'll show you some images of that. So how does this book portray science? It includes physics, rocket scientists, synergy, electrical and other engineering, computer science. He includes lots of physics, solar power, electric, and coding. How does this connect to our class readings? The book really reminds me of Rosalind Franklin, as well as Watson and Crick, and how they were like the forefront of their time and creating and discovering things that would change the world forever. My evaluation of this book is that it's one of the best books I've read in years. It's an autobiography, but it's also a mix of science, love, loss, business, determination. And it really does show some real implications of science and the things that can be achieved if you put your mind to it, and that science is the endeavor of many and not just one person. Elements I can use as a teacher. I can really use his drive and moxie. I can teach students the role and importance of science, determination that science Work hard can solve almost anything, kind of like I had said before, despite your upbringing. Then this is just a picture of Zip2. It's similar to Google Maps, initially called Global Link Information Systems. This is x.com/PayPal. You can see Elon here merging with the other business and creating PayPal. SpaceX mission to Mars, I suggest going to this website and you can explore how successful SpaceX is today. This is just some images of the Falcon 1 versus the Falcon 9, as well as the Dragon head. That's the newer space rocket they use today. This is the company Tesla. Down here on the bottom left is the first Tesla car that they had that wasn't as successful. And then these are some of their newer cars that they have today. And then finally, this is just a picture of Solar City. Solar City is one of Elon's newer companies as well, where he focuses on solar power and trying to, again, better the world through cleaner energy, cleaner vehicles, and then cheaper space travel so that we can better humanity. Thank you for listening.